Another day in Iowa, another day on the bus.
We'll go for a bus ride?
Mr. Vice President, thanks for letting me ride with you today.
Come on.
9 months after he launched his third White House bid, an upbeat but road-weary Joe Biden still projecting confidence as he faces a critical test. What does your gut tell you about Iowa next week?
My gut tells me things are going well, and it's not inconsistent with the poll. It's going to be close.
In the last week of the Iowa caucus campaign, with many of his rivals tied up in Washington, Biden blitzed the state. 23 events in 9 days. In between, using his time on the bus to lock up precinct captains, check in with family, rally union allies.
I just wanted to call and say thanks.
So there's not a wasted moment on this bus. There's no, people think you do an event, you drive, you go to the next event, you take some time off in between to rest.
A lot.
On stage, Biden's closing argument for the caucuses has been more like a general election.
Ladies and gentlemen, in November, America will have a chance to answer the question, does the character of a president matter?
17 Republicans thought they knew how to beat Donald Trump and lost the nomination to him. Hillary Clinton thought she knew how to beat Donald Trump, lost the general election to him. What makes you think you know how to beat Donald Trump? Your way of beating him is the right way, and can we?
Well, I think there's two things. One, everybody's onto him now. I think the way to go after Donald Trump is to point out what he hadn't done, point out what he won't do, and point out why it's important, the bad things he has done, how badly it's hurt the country and hurt our character as a country.
While he emphasizes one-on-one connections, the vice president battling the perception of an enthusiasm gap. You often talk about this as a head versus heart election. You seem to be making the pitch for the head, not the heart.
Well, I think it is both. The vast majority of the American people know me, and I think they, by and large, based on polling data, the good news they know me, the bad news they know me. You know, the attacks on me and my weaknesses are real, but the attacks on my strengths just aren't going anywhere.
Biden's stalwart supporters echo his core argument about electability.
We have to get a good Democrat in there, so he's our man. He's the one that's going to beat Trump.
So that's the biggest selling point for you, that you think he's the best candidate to beat Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
As polls show a tightening primary battle, Biden has turned up the heat on Bernie Sanders.
Bernie's dilemma, from my perspective, is that he is not being straightforward on how he's going to get done what he's suggesting and the cost of what he's suggesting.
Biden insists Iowa won't be make or break for his candidacy, taking a long view of the race.
Nothing happens here on Monday is going to end this campaign. It's a very different circumstance than it has been in the past. And I think it's going to be a really tough contest here. One of the things that I think you're going to see, a bunch of it's coming out bunched up, and that's going to be fine. I mean, I'd rather have an outright win, don't get me wrong. And I think I have a real firewall in South Carolina. And then we go into the Super Tuesday states that have a significant number of minorities and African Americans running. I think I'm going to do fine.
If you're not the nominee, no regrets about making this fight?
No, I would have. The only thing, I made a commitment to Bo, not that I would run, but that I would not back away from things I've always done and cared about. And so there is no regret. As long as I do my best, and as Bo would say, Dad, remember home base. Remember who you are. Just be who you are and make your case. If my case can be made in a way that people accept it, all the better. If they don't, they don't.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.